Welcome to Blackbriar Gaming. Today we're here to talk about GW's not-so-mysterious new tank and some new Horus Heresy release rumours regarding Legion army books. So, first up, that tank, or as we all know it by now, the Kratos. So if you do a quick Google search, you'll be able to find the full rules for this, but to avoid those copyright goblins, I'm going to just put up some generic rules here without too many specific details, but enough to get us talking. So the Kratos Battletank is an Armor 14 monster. It has Armor 14 front, sides, and rear, and the vehicle comes as reinforced. Whatever that means, we'll find out with the new rules, I'm sure. You're looking at a base points cost of 300 points, and that gets bigger with any upgrades and weapons that you put on it, and you certainly might want to get interesting with the weapons you put on it and the extra cost that comes with it, because there's some cool options to match what it's doing on the battlefield. The main weapon is the turret-mounted battle cannon with armor-piercing and high-explosive shells. So it's going to be able to deal with tanks and infantry, which is really nice and flexible, which you don't see very often in Horus Heresy units. And it may exchange that battle cannon for a Volkite Cardinal or a Melter blast gun, and we'll find out what that does with the new rules when they come out. But I dare say, whatever they do, they're going to be doing a lot of damage. The Volkite more infantry-based, and the Melter blast gun, of course, going for vehicles at, I dare say, a shorter range than the battle cannon. If you want to upgrade this thing, you've got 5 weapon options to play around with. Coaxial hull or sponson weapons. They come standard with a coaxial autocannon and then heavy bolters for all those other weapons. But if you're willing to pay the points, you can exchange them for Volkite calivers, more autocannons, las cannons, or heavy flamers, at least on those hulls and sponson weapons for the heavy flamers. And if you really feel like you need to make a statement, you can chuck a 6th weapon on there with a pintle-mounted weapon, which could be anything from an autocannon, a heavy bolted multi-melter, etc., etc. So this thing's pretty cool. We have heard about it before. This isn't something that GW are just making up to fill a gap. It was first mentioned in Book 8 of the Horus Heresy. And I've actually pulled my Book 8 off the shelves and opened it up for the first time in many years and had a look at the piece that mentions it. We're on page 58 of Malevolence. So it reads, as the slower elements finally reached the front of the advance, squadrons of obsolete Kratos Battletanks from the Red Tier's reserve armories joined the fray. Previously retired in favour of faster, more multi-purpose vehicles, such as the ubiquitous Predator, the Kratos served as a dedicated infantry support tank, and its heavy cannon quickly opened a path for the infantry to follow. Between the righteous fury of the Erelum and supporting infantry echelons, and the devastation wrought by the canister shells of the Kratos, the vanguard began to advance once more. Great imagery there. So what role is this going to fill? This is going to fill the role between essentially a Sakaran, the smaller version, and your super heavy battle tanks. It's going to be at around that Spartan cost mark, where you're happy to include it in regular sized games, which sometimes you can't with those super heavy vehicles, but also a tank that's going to do some serious damage, whereby the current non-super heavy Space Marine tanks outside of the Spartan don't do as much damage, I guess, as you want them for that point level. And even the Spartan itself, it's a bunch of las cannon shots. This is no doubt going to provide a nice big pie plate that we get to chuck down on lots of units and blow them up. Now, why I like it and why I think it makes sense for the late Heresy context. As you saw in that passage from Book 8, it was retired in favour of faster, more multi-purpose vehicles. But of course, by the time the Battle for Terra comes around, or the Siege of Terra, all of those vehicles are starting to suffer, mainly because they've been destroyed, or they're missing parts for repairs, etc. So as the legions get more and more desperate, as the Heresy continues, they're going to be pulling these Kratos out, dusting them off, and getting them onto the battlefield. So pretty excited to see these on the table. It looks like it's going to be a great model, and it's really going to match the aesthetics of those existing Sakaran ranges and the Space Marine line in general. Now, moving on, let's talk about the latest rumours that we've seen. There's a few things here. First up, I want to talk about crew options for different vehicles. So the rumours suggested that we'll see various armour marks for different vehicles coming out in plastic for the Spartan and Deimos vehicles in particular. They reckon Mark II, Mark IV types of armour. We will wait and see. That's a lot to expect out of some plastic sprues to have multiple versions of crew in them. So I'm a bit dubious, but it would be really nice to be able to match the crew of vehicles to the armor type that your Legion is running with. Of course, some armor types are more common and more appropriate for certain legions, so not being stuck to one armor type for your vehicles would be really nice. The rumours are also saying that they're releasing special and heavy weapon packs into Warhammer stores and selling them out of Warhammer stores once Heresy releases. I think it's insinuating that we'll see resin Forge World weapon packs at GW stores. I certainly see this as more likely than seeing standalone plastic weapon kits and heavy weapon kits, but you never know. We'll wait and see. But also seeing Forge World stuff selling at GW stores, possibly unlikely, but this may be their move to give it a real shot and to get more, hype and popularity around those Forge World and more knowledge of those Forge World items to the generic masses that buy at Warhammer stores. The next one, and we're getting more interesting as we go here. The next rumor is saying that Horus Heresy will not be subject to 3-year edition life cycles. This is a pretty good assumption. I don't think you have to have inside knowledge of GW's workings to be able to assume this. Much like GW's recent specialist games, we're talking Necromunda as a good example, they're not re-releasing a completely new rule set every 3 years like you see with their bigger game systems like Age of Sigmar and 40k. So Horus Heresy being the same as those specialist games is highly likely, so I dare say we can give a tick to that rumour. The last one is the plans for Codex-style books for every Legion. The rumours are suggesting that every single Legion is going to get its own individual book, much like the codexes or supplements that we see for 40k. So we're talking 18 Legions, and we're suggesting here, I assume, that Imperial Army and Demons, Mechanicum, maybe more different factions, are going to get their own book. At that point, we're talking at 21 minimum books. I find this pretty unlikely. Warhammer 40k sits at around the 30 mark for all of its codexes and supplements, and maintaining those is an absolute chore for GW, so I find it highly unlikely that they're going to take on the task of releasing 21 or so separate individual books for this system, noting that it is really still a specialist game. What I see being more likely, and rumours that we've seen previously, are that GW will go for the style of campaign books, much like the black books that currently exist, really, that have rules and lore and missions, etc., relevant to various Horus Heresy campaigns that are ongoing, and including rules for a number of different armies in each book. This makes sense from a release schedule point of view in that they can get more people playing more armies quicker, and it makes sense from a sales point of view in that more people have to buy each of the books to get their hands on the rules for their army. So I personally am pretty dubious. I don't think we'll see 18, 21 plus books for each of the armies for Horus Heresy, but hopefully those campaign books or whatever they choose to release after those initial compendiums will have lots of lore and plenty of information. Noting, of course, we've got the black books that currently exist, which are packed full of beautiful information, if not having relevant rules for the next edition. And that's everything for today. Thank you so much for listening. Don't forget, we're a new channel, so hitting subscribe and a like really helps us out. Remember to keep those dice rolling and get hyped for Heresy.